Imagine facing an enemy you've dismissed as weak, only to realize your entire strategy was built on a deadly misjudgment. That's exactly what happened to the German aces when they went up against the P-47 Thunderbolt. What tactical and engineering secrets did they miss that allowed this unassuming fighter to become one of the most feared aircraft of World War II? Stay with me, because what happened next changed the entire war in the air. On April 15, 1943, at 25,000 feet over occupied Belgium, Captain Werner Schroer of Fighter Wing 26 spotted American fighters approaching his formation. Schroer was an experienced ace who would eventually be credited with 114 aerial victories during the war. He had flown combat missions over North Africa and knew what a real fighter should look like. When he saw the P-47 Thunderbolts that day, he radioed his fellow pilots in disbelief. The planes seemed absurd compared to the German Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s. The P-47 had a massive round engine sticking out front, a bubble cockpit perched on top of a thick fuselage, and stubby wings. To German pilots who valued speed and agility above all else, these American planes looked like they had no business being in a dogfight. The P-47 Thunderbolt was the largest single-engine fighter aircraft built during World War II. When fully loaded with fuel, ammunition, and bombs, it weighed up to 8 tons. That's about as much as 3 modern cars combined. For comparison, a Messerschmitt Bf-109 weighed less than 3 tons. The P-47 was nearly 3 times heavier than the sleek Spitfire that many American pilots had previously flown. Its big radial engine had 18 cylinders arranged in a circle, which gave it that barrel-shaped appearance from the front. German engineers preferred inline engines that were mounted lengthwise in the nose, creating a more streamlined look. To the Germans, the P-47's design seemed primitive and clumsy. Based on what we know about German engineering philosophy at the time, we can assume they believed their approach was superior. They had built some of the fastest fighters in the world, and appearance mattered to them almost as much as performance. The P-47 flew its first combat mission on April 8, 1943, when American pilots conducted a sweep over Western Europe. The mission failed due to radio problems, but flights resumed on April 15th. That day, Major Don Blakesley of the 4th Group scored the Thunderbolt's first air victory by shooting down a Focke-Wulf FW-190. However, early encounters didn't all go well for the Americans. The pilots converting from Spitfires to P-47s hated their new planes at first. They called them 7-ton milk bottles and complained that the fighters were too heavy and slow to climb. The 4th Group's commander particularly disliked the P-47, and his negative attitude spread to his pilots. As a result, the 4th had the fewest kills of any of the first 3 P-47 squadrons in Europe during those early months. By June 26, 1943, the 56th Fighter Group had flown 31 combat missions, but had only managed to shoot down a handful of German aircraft while losing several of their own P-47s. German propaganda took full advantage of the P-47's early struggles. They portrayed the Thunderbolt as just another example of crude American mass production, built by a nation that was better at making refrigerators than fighter aircraft. This narrative fit perfectly with Nazi ideology, which claimed German engineering was superior to anything the Allies could produce. Luftwaffe intelligence reports initially focused on the P-47's obvious weaknesses. They noted its poor climb rate at low altitudes, its heavy weight, and its inability to turn as tightly as German fighters. What German intelligence failed to grasp was the P-47's true capabilities at high altitude. The reports didn't fully appreciate the power of the turbocharged engine or the incredible toughness of the airframe. This could have been because most early encounters happened at lower altitudes where the P-47 was at a disadvantage. German pilots and intelligence officers were making judgments based on incomplete information. The contrast between German and American fighter design couldn't have been more dramatic. German engineers like Willy Messerschmitt believed in creating lightweight, agile fighters with inline engines that cut through the air like knives. Every design choice focused on speed and maneuverability in traditional dogfighting. The Americans took a completely different approach with the P-47. Designer Alexander Kartveli built the aircraft around the massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, which produced 2,000 horsepower. Then he added a complicated turbocharger system in the rear fuselage to give the engine maximum power at high altitude. The result was a fighter that looked ungainly on the ground, but was designed for a specific type of warfare. The huge cockpit wasn't a flaw, but a feature that allowed pilots to fly 8-hour escort missions in relative comfort. The robust construction meant the aircraft could take tremendous battle damage and still fly home. German fighter tactics in 1943 relied heavily on what's called boom and zoom attacks. They would dive from above at high speed, fire a quick burst at enemy bombers, then zoom back up to altitude or escape by diving away. Their fighters excelled at this because they were light and responsive. When German pilots first encountered the P-47, they assumed their proven tactics would work even better against such a heavy opponent. Based on what we know about German training and combat experience, we can infer that they expected the P-47 to be sluggish in both climbs and dives. They thought the American pilots would struggle to evade attacks or counterattack effectively. These assumptions seemed logical given what they knew about aircraft design. A heavier plane should be slower to respond, harder to maneuver, and easier to shoot down. Or so they thought.
One of the biggest mistakes German pilots made was assuming that the P-47's weight would be a crippling disadvantage in combat. They believed such a heavy fighter couldn't possibly sustain high-G maneuvers without falling out of the sky. They thought it would be easy to escape from a pursuing P-47 by simply diving away, since the heavy aircraft surely couldn't keep up. This misconception was reinforced by early combat results. In the spring and summer of 1943, P-47 pilots were still learning how to fight in their new aircraft. They often tried to dogfight with German fighters at low and medium altitudes, where the Thunderbolt's weight was indeed a disadvantage. The early model P-47Cs also lacked the paddle blade propellers that would later dramatically improve their climb rate. When German pilots successfully shot down these early P-47s or forced them to break off engagements, it confirmed their belief that the American fighter was inferior. As the months passed in late 1943, something started to change in the minds of German pilots. They began to see P-47s absorbing damage that would have destroyed any German fighter. On June 26, 1943, Lieutenant Robert Johnson's P-47 was hit over 200 times by German fighters. His hydraulic controls failed, his canopy jammed shut, and his fuselage was riddled with bullet holes. Yet the Thunderbolt kept flying. After the attack, a German pilot flew alongside Johnson's battered aircraft, reportedly saluted in disbelief, and flew away. No Messerschmitt or Focke-Wulf could have survived that punishment. Word of Johnson's survival spread through German squadrons. Pilots who had grown accustomed to dominating Allied fighters now faced an opponent that simply wouldn't go down. This was psychologically unsettling. Even more disturbing was when experienced aces started falling to P-47s at high altitude. By autumn of 1943, American pilots had finally figured out how to fight in the Thunderbolt. They stopped trying to dogfight at low altitude and instead climbed to 30,000 feet, where their turbocharged engines gave them a huge advantage. From that height, they would dive at speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour, faster than anything the Germans could fly. German pilots suddenly found themselves being overtaken in dives by the very aircraft they had mocked as slow and heavy. The P-47 could dive so fast that pilots had to use special throttle techniques to prevent their propeller tips from breaking the sound barrier. When the Germans tried to escape by climbing steeply, the P-47s followed them up, something that shouldn't have been possible for such a heavy fighter. By December 1943, new paddle blade propellers increased the P-47's climb rate by 40%, which came as a complete surprise to German pilots who had counted on being able to outclimb their opponents. Major Joseph Priller, a German ace who had initially mocked the P-47, later admitted, "We laughed at them in 1943. Nobody laughs now." The story of how German aces initially underestimated the P-47 Thunderbolt teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes the most successful people can be wrong precisely because of their past success. The German pilots were so confident in their experience and their sleek fighters that they couldn't imagine a different approach to air combat might work just as well. The P-47 went on to achieve a kill ratio of 4.6 to 1 in aerial combat and destroyed more than 7,000 German aircraft during the war. If you found this story fascinating, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories from World War II aviation history. Leave a comment below and let me know which aircraft you'd like to hear about next.